He is an 18-time FLW Cup qualifier, a 6-time Bassmaster Classic qualifier, a 4-time FLW Tour winner, a former All-American champion, a 4-time Angler of the Year, the 2020 Progressive Bassmaster Angler of the Year. Clark Wendlandt joins me this week on...
I'm Bob Cobb from the Bassmaster. Welcome to Mercer.
Welcome one, welcome all, friends, family, freeloaders, fishing freaks, and of course you, my humpers. Welcome into the Awkwardly Honest Fishing Podcast that goes by my last name. This is the 187th edition of the Mercer Podcast, and I hope wherever you are in the world, life is treating you well. Come on in here and let's just talk for a little while. First of all, before we go any further, I got to say something. Earlier this week, it was Remembrance Day in Canada. It was Veterans Day in the United States. And for all of you that serve, for all of you that have served, that are currently serving, thank you. Thank you. I mean, weirdly enough, whenever I say that, I kind of feel foolish, just because thank you doesn't seem like enough. What you guys give up and sacrifice so that we all have the freedom to chase the 5 biggest bass and talk about things in the fishing industry it's humbling. So honestly, to all of you, thank you. Last week's show was a great show. Incredible feedback. I mean, we had, I think, almost 500 comments, which proves to me, no matter how much I beg to you guys to like, comment, subscribe, do all those things to stroke the algorithm, some of you care, but really the most of you just care about some free stuff. And we do have a winner. He or she, I guess. You never know with a, I think it's a he. Real Mitch Rapp. Getting your AFCO breakwater gloves sending your way. And all you had to do was comment. Leave a comment. You could just say AFCO breakwater gloves, and we were going to pick a winner. And Mitch, Real Mitch Rapp is our winner. We have reached out to you. Make sure you get in touch with us. We'll get your address. We'll get them sent your way. And I know what you guys are thinking. Well, I've missed out. I didn't win. I never win any of these things. Well, unless you're Real Mitch Rapp, you're correct. You didn't win, but you didn't miss out. Because guess what? I'm going to do it again. I've got another pair. I'm going to give them away. And all you got to do is put AFCO breakwater gloves in your comment. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe. You have to like and comment AFCO breakwater gloves. And give me your normal comments because I love hearing your feedback. And thank you. Thank you guys for making this show what it is. This week's show is an interesting one. Clark Wendlandt, who just recently announced his retirement. A legendary career. I mean, a Hall of Fame career. 4 Angler of the Year titles. I mean, you heard it all at the beginning of the show when I rattled all off that stuff. And there's more to go to that. An incredible 30-plus year career. And that's what I want this show to be a celebration of. That being said, well, we've seen some people retire over the last number of years, and some people in the comments have said, well, so-and-so retired because of Forward Facing Sonar. We have yet to have somebody come out and say, yeah, this is why I'm leaving. Well, Clark Wendlandt openly says, this is why I am leaving. If Forward Facing Sonar was made illegal, he says he would have continued fishing on. So right, wrong, or indifferent, those are the facts. Those are the truth. That's what he feels, and that is what he is doing. We talk about that and so much more. So get a soda pop, get a coffee, pop some popcorn, kick back, relax, and let's catch up with truly one of the greats in this sport, the amazing Clark Wendlandt. Clark Wendlandt, you're retired. What does that feel like?
Gosh, it's amazing. I mean, it's a little bit scary, to be honest with you,
Yeah.
because for my whole working life, I've had a job, which gives you some purpose and, trying to make a living for our family. And so, that's a little different now. But, we're in a good position and I feel good about it.
I mean, I would say I'm shocked, but I'm not, because I know you were kind of contemplating this for a little while. We'd corresponded, but was this something you thought of 5 years ago? Something you thought of 5 months ago? 5 minutes ago?
Well, when you get to be, I don't know, retirement age, so my age, I think it runs through your mind. I mean, and some of your peers, Davey Height, even though he's not really retired, he retired from the elites. And, Kevin Van Dam, Mark Zona, just basically retired. I mean, I consider it retirement because they're not doing what they were doing. And
Yeah.
so I don't know if there'll be a different chapter within fishing for me. Probably not. I'm not anticipating that at all. But, I have thought about it a lot of times, but it's just really been the last, say, year that I've just really strongly started thinking this may be the right time.
What makes this the right time?
What makes this the right time? I remember distinctly you and I talking last year about the same time. It was in the fall. And I was as fired up about tournament bass fishing as I could ever be. And I still love it. I mean, I'm passionate about it. I could flip the switch and go back into it like in no time. I mean, it would take me like one day and I'd be in full tournament mode. But forward facing is not the way I think the sport should go. And so can I compete at that level? Yeah, I think I can. 2 years ago, I made the Classic. 4 years ago, I won AOY. I've done plenty good with forward facing. I just don't like it. It doesn't feel like the way tournament bass fishing should be to me. So, and I've got my reasons and everybody else has got their reasons, pro or con either way, but I don't have to do it anymore. And it's not as fun. It's not the mystery that I believe it should be. The greatest anglers are the greatest anglers because they could go break down a lake in no time and they didn't need any equipment to tell them where the fish were. They just went out there and intuitively figured it out. The Rick Cluns, the Kevin Van Dams. Now, all of those guys used the electronics as time went on, but they didn't have to have them. And that's the way I think we should, the top level of bass fishing should be. So I don't have to compete against that anymore. And so I'm not going to.
That makes sense. To play devil's advocate, some may say you're taking your ball and going home because you just don't like how the game's going. What would you say to that person?
Well, I mean, I take everything like
and sorry to interrupt you, but that is meant with all due respect. Like when I say that to you.
Yeah. I have been passionate about this sport and love this sport. I've seen it at every, turn.
Yeah.
I mean, from Ray Scott to Fish Fishburne, going to FLW for however many years, coming back, fishing both bass and FLW for years, back when you could do that. And I've seen it all. I've seen every level of it, no matter what electronics there were from, back in the day when I started, it was just flashers. And, and then we got mapping. I mean, I went on the first time to St. Clair and I'm literally out in the middle of the lake finding one green buoy to line up on a house. I mean, it was ridiculous. And then I get out there and it's foggy and I can see nothing. And so literally I'm just like hoping, I'm not even anywhere near the right spot. So, technology makes it easier. And that's what I am all of those other technologies you don't have to have them. A guy can pick up a flipping stick and go down the bank and still compete in a tournament. But in a forward-facing derby that it dominates, which it dominates in most of them, but let's just say it's a pure one. Something like what Smith Lake was this last year, you got no choice. And anytime they're going to tell me I have no choice, I don't believe it's right for tournament bass fishing. It ought to be guys coming from different places, all meeting at the point of who can catch them the best.
I got a tricky question for you
Oh,
here.
good. I love those kind.
What is more likely to happen if forward-facing sonar never was invented? Let's just say, what is more likely to happen for you to retire this year, or for you to win Angler of the Year in 2020?
I think I would have won Angler of the Year. You're saying would I have won it if Forward Facing wouldn't have come along?
Which is most likely? Like, if forward-facing sonar was never invented, is it more likely that you would have retired this year, or is it more likely that you would have won Angler of the Year in 2020 if you had to choose one of them?
That's too tricky. I mean, I would have won Angler of the Year that year in 2020, and I would not be retiring this year.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, yeah, I'm not shirking and running from forward facing. I just don't. It's not as fun for me. The mystery of what a lake is, when you put your boat in on Lake Ontario and you run out there in the middle and somebody finds enough fish to win a tournament. That's the way I think tournament bass fishing should be. And it's not as fun for Clark Wendlandt, who doesn't have to do it anymore, to do that.
It makes total sense. And I don't think you'd get an argument from anybody. I mean, there's people that absolutely love it, obviously. But all those people, I always say, they all fell in love with it long before, with the sport of fishing, long before that was a thing. Now, years down the road, there might be generations who never knew fishing without this. I mean, there's generations who never knew fishing without braided line, without graphite rods, without all of these innovations. But I've yet to see anything that happened on that screen that rivals watching an 8-pounder eat a frog.
No, there's nothing. It can't. It's not going to happen. And we could go on and on about it, Dave. So maybe we'll just move on.
Well, okay, all right, we will. When you look back at your career, where was your breaking point? Like, where was the point where you felt like, man, I think I can do this? Like, where was that big moment? Was it a person? Was it an event? Was it a situation?
I actually know when it was. It was actually in 1991, which is a long time ago. But I was fishing Redman back in those days, now BFL or whatever they're calling it. But anyway, it was Redman. And that's, when the tournament, Redman was the organization that, the working man or just the guy that didn't have as much money fished. And Bass was the elite, top level. And so Redman gave you the opportunity to fish a full year, and then you got to a point where you could fish for the All-American. Well, they had a regional tournament going into the All-American, and in that regional tournament, I won. It was a truck and a boat. And so, but right before that tournament happened, my wife and I had made a decision that we were like, if this doesn't go anywhere, if you're don't do something in this regional, we didn't know I was going to make the All-American. You had to do good enough in the regional. So, and I won it. And that was kind of the aha moment for her. I never needed an aha moment. I thought I'm good to go from the get-go. I didn't have any idea I could make a living doing it, but that's when I really, hey, when your family's with you, then you're in good shape.
You, when you said you didn't need that moment, was it in your head, was it like, I'm good enough to do this? Or was it in your head that I'm not doing anything else? This is it for me.
Well, I think it's really, I hate to use the word testosterone, but listen, it's just,
it's a hell of a drug.
It is what it is. When you're young and if you don't have the confidence and brashness to say that you can do something, if you don't truly believe it in your heart at that age, then you're in trouble. And I see those young kids all the time. I'm talking about not just in bass fishing, but in anything. And when I see that kind of brash, the thoughts in your head that mess you up so bad are 35 to 45 to 55. But at 20 to 30, those thoughts don't even show up. I'm going to catch them. It doesn't matter. That's the way I felt about it. So I just thought I could do it. I didn't plan it. I just thought I could.
We're speaking about testosterone, because it is a hell of a drug, and it is amazing. Just go cut off a 20-year-old in traffic if you don't think it is. But does that make you a better angler at that stage in your life, or do you think anglers' peaks are still just a little bit later when they get a little bit more mellow?
Well, that's a really good question to somebody that is literally a student of the sport, and I love talking about tournament bass fishing, pro bass fishing. You know what we do, and the ins and outs of tournaments and why. I think 20 maybe to 25. So let's just say you start at 20. So I think the first 5 years, you can see a little piece of greatness in an angler. Patrick Walters. I take him because I think he is great. And when I look at Patrick Walters, in that right when he came out of college and he started, I mean, you could see it, but now you really see it. And, there's no telling the sky's the limit for fishermen like him. He's got it all. You throw forward facing in the garbage can and he's literally going to be just as good. Not any doubt in my mind. And, guys like him, I think the peak is that probably 25 to 40. But what starts happening is you just have you start resting on what you did before. And, we go to the same lake so much. So it makes it play out that way. If you could go to every lake and literally throw what you did last time on a certain lake out the window, you would always be a better angler. Always, because it's never the same. People want to say it is, but it isn't. It's always different. Might be that the fish react differently. They may still be on the same place or something changes. To me, I think the very peak of an angler's career is 25 to say the guy that's going to be in it for the long haul is going to be, you're going to find the 25 to 40 is going to be where they were the very best. Doesn't mean they're not going to win tournaments later on, but that's going to be their peak.
When you say you saw it in Patrick early on, what exactly is it? What did you see?
Well, one thing is just a brash confidence. I mean, you just, once you talk to him, you're like, yeah. I mean, people told me about him, but I didn't know him at all. As a matter of fact, I'll give you a Patrick Walters story. The year I won Angler of the Year, I didn't even know Patrick hardly at all. And I went and practiced Santee Cooper. I don't know if you remember, but those were three fall derbies we had that year. And so Santee was maybe the first or second. Then we went to Gunnersville, but whatever it was. And I went and practiced because I hadn't fished Santee in so long, like 25 years. And I was worried about getting around the lake. And I talked to Davey. Davey could give me no information at all. So I just was like, he goes, how are you running? I was like, I'm running the river channel. Well, the river channel's like a snake around that thing. I mean, it takes you hours to run that river channel. And he said, man, you ought to just call Patrick Walters and see if he'll just show you how to run around. I called Patrick Walters and Patrick's like, heck yeah, Clark, I'll take you. I mean, he jumps in. I pull over to where his lake house is or his house, jumps in the boat with me. He says, run here, run here. We run like, half of the lake. And instantly I knew how to run it. He just was like, yeah, I'll show you how to run it. It's not a big deal. He didn't tell me about a bass or anything. He just showed me how to run it. And so, I mean, that was kind of my introduction to Patrick Walters. But I know what it usually means is lots of very high finishes. And he's got that part.
Yeah. And I would say to have the confidence to say, yeah, sure, I'll show you how to do it. Like there's so many sports and so many people would think that, oh, wait a second. This guy's got the dude leading Angler of the Year calling him. And Patrick was, I believe, in the top 10 for Angler of the Year that year because I think he's only been 1 year that he wasn't. But you would think that a lot of people would want to shut that door. But to eagerly just say, yeah, sure, I'll take you for a ride. I mean, that says a lot right there.
No, it does. It does. I my hat's off to him. And actually, when we had the Angler of the Year dinner at the Classic that year, I invited him to sit at the table with us because I was like, I'm going to give anybody that helped me during the year, Frank Talley, he and I roomed together. Obviously, he was going to be there, and Patrick Walters. And I was like, I mean, he helped me. I mean, that was like, even though it probably didn't matter in the big scheme of things, I just had more confidence getting around that place. So, yeah, I mean, I thought that was pretty cool. And I'll bring up one more thing. Back in the day when I started, the the Tommy Biffles and, the guys that were around back then, that did not happen. I mean, that did not happen. You were not calling up Tommy Biffle and saying, "Hey, you think you'd show me how to run this place?" He'd be like, "Hey man, no, I'm not doing it." He wouldn't have showed you, I don't believe. I mean, it wasn't friendliness. It was, I'm going to kick your butt today, tomorrow, and next week too.
Why has that changed?
It's changed because the youth are different now. They can sit next to each other and have just a normal old chat. "Hey man, what's going on? Yeah, I just caught. Oh yeah, it's only a 4. It's only a 4." He cranks him in. The other guy chunks out there on the same ledge. "I got one too," and they're just sitting there side by side. In my day, the guy wouldn't have even gotten within 100 yards of me. I mean, I'm like, no, it just wouldn't have happened. That we have moved to that. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just different.
Very different. Do you think a lot of that has to, I mean, I'm sure some of it has to do with today's world. I mean, today's world is a little bit more soft and cuddly than it once was.
I agree.
But also they never fished, pro on pro in the same boat. I'm sure a lot of that secretiveness and that you're not sharing anything came from that. Would you not agree?
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, that was a different day. I mean, the pro on pro in the same boat was, gosh, what a miserable situation that was. I mean, it's like I would win most of the time. And when I say win, be able to take my boat, maybe go to my fish. But, I've developed a good reputation. When you were just starting out, you had no reputation. So it was a lot harder then. But back in those days, the reputation that you carried was very important, because if if they may not be confident in you saying, "Hey, man, I'm really on them," they would be more confident if you had backed it up throughout the entire year.
So tell me about your worst situation. I mean, you don't have to include names, but there's a lot of nightmares that come from that and some great stories. But what was the worst situation you had as a draw?
I can't think of just this terrible situation, but I will tell you one that I think is just kind of good. Kind of an interesting or funny story. So in my first year on Lake Ontario, it was my very first Bassmaster tournament. That was back in the invitational days. I started in 1992 after I won the Redman All-American. I started on St. Lawrence River. And so the St. Lawrence River, it was out of Clayton, New York. And so we took off out of there, and the lake, we had 18-foot boats with 150 horsepower motors. The lake was like a vaunted, everybody knew it was better, but everybody was scared to death of it. And you should respect it, but being scared to death is not exactly what you should do. And so, but I talked to this old guy. I don't know if you would remember him, but his name was Robert Tucker. Robert Tucker was a bass fisherman from way back in the day. And I just talked to Randy Fight the other day, who builds rifles, and he built me a rifle. And he told me Robert Tucker's still doing good. Not, I don't know exactly what he's doing, but he's still doing well. But anyway, he was a captain, and I was scared to death. I mean, I got an 18-foot boat. I've never done this in my life. Ontario is like the biggest water I will ever see. And he was like, "Clark, you just take your time. You can handle any wave you want to out there." So, I mean, I just went out there. And as I was going, I don't remember who I drew that day, but I was pro on pro. 8 boats ahead of me was Shaw Grigsby and Larry Nixon. They were in the same boat. They drew out together. And so they went out ahead, and they started jumping those massive waves, jumping them. And I see them. I knew right where they were, right ahead of me. And all of a sudden they get out there in the biggest waves, some of the biggest I'd ever seen, going straight up, and they turn around and they went back the other way. And my partner was like, "Hey, what? They just went back. What are we going to do?" And I said, "We're going all the way. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how long it takes us. That's where we're going." And I ended up finishing 9th in that very first tournament I ever finished. I was actually 2nd after that second day. So, it just, as far as draw goes, I can't think of any really bad days, because that's been gone such a long time. That changed early on.
Did you learn quicker then? I mean, I guess you can't say quicker than today, because you can literally watch everyone in the top 10 what they did after a tournament stuff, but the actual hand-on-hand watching somebody, you couldn't. I mean, it's been years since you could keep a secret in our sport, but 15 years, 10 years ago, you could keep secrets in the sport pre-live. Did that hurt the learning curve when they went away from that pattern?
I don't remember thinking that, because I don't remember having that many draws that were fishermen that were, that people would still remember today. Not to say their family wouldn't remember them, but I'm just talking about the fishing public. The Kevin Van Dam types, the Denny Browers, the Tommy Biffles, all the marquee names that, we've come to associate with the top level of tournament fishing. I don't remember drawing very many of those. I did draw Denny Brower one time that, and unfortunately for Denny Brower, we were on his home lake of the Ozarks, and he unfortunately drew me. I'm trying to make the Classic through the invitationals at that point. We're fishing the top 100 and the invitation. And Denny Brower is a super guy, but when you're in the boat with him tournament bass fishing, he really wants to whoop your butt. That's just the way they are. Yeah. Every tournament fisherman's that way. So but at that point, Guido had done me such a big favor in that everybody in tournament bass fishing thought you had to have a spinning rod to catch one on a bed. That's just the way they looked at it. They were like, I'm like, man, I think these guys are just messing this up. I started spooling up 20-pound fluoro, or probably mono at the time, 20-pound mono, now either braid or fluoro, and setting the hook on these big fish. He goes, let's both fish for every fish. Instead of Clark fishing for one, we were sight fishing. Instead of Clark fishing for one, Denny fishing for the next. Clark fishing one, he goes, let's just fish for the same fish. Well, I understand sight fish really well. And so we're both fishing for the same bass. We got our bait in the same bed, but I know where the bait needs to be. He has no idea. And so, and I'm not cracking on Denny Brower at all, because Denny Brower was one of the most amazing fishermen of all time, but he wasn't a sight fisherman. He was a flipper, and he would have been flipping boat docks or flipping rocky banks at that point in time. And so, but he was fishing with a fairy wand, and I was just cracking him with a bait caster. And it was a day that I remember it really well. After you kind of jarred my memory on that, but one of those just special days you get to fish with Denny Brower, and that's pretty cool.
Who's the coolest person you've ever spent the day in a boat with, aside from Denny Brower?
I'm going to have to think pretty hard about that one. It'll come to me here in a minute, but the coolest person I've ever spent a day with. I'm going to think about that one for a minute.
Or who'd you learn the most from?
One thing that I was thinking of a minute ago when you were kind of on that learning curve is that, from the fishermen is one thing that you can learn the very most. The way you learn the very most about fishing and how to get better at fishing is fish with a really good fisherman. It doesn't matter who it is. If it's anybody that's good at all, he can be a lot worse than you overall, but just somebody that's got some confidence and understands fishing, because you'll see the way they do it. And when you see the way they do it, it might help you bring that into your game. And that's one thing I've done well in my career. And I guess maybe why I lasted 33 years is because I've been able to change. I've changed many, many times, many things. There's lots of baits I never even throw anymore. And I throw lots of new baits that I would have never imagined throwing. I want the very best bait. But yeah, the way to learn is to get in the boat with other anglers.
Do you still have that same fuel and passion? Like, obviously you'll still fish a bunch. That's the joke about retiring from fishing. You don't really retire from actually fishing. You still go fishing, but will you still have that? Do you think when you step away from tournaments, you'll still have that same fire to not just catch them on a lake, but know that you are catching them in the most efficient way?
Yeah. Well, I don't know exactly how Forward Facing is going to come into that, but yeah, the answer to that question is yeah, because everything I do in life is that way. And I've been, I guess, announced my retirement for about a month or in my mind, it's been about a month when I made the decision, and I've been going like Like, I mean, like not even resting, like can't even sleep at night kind of stuff. Just whether it be hunting, whether it be fishing, whether it be saltwater fishing, it doesn't matter what it is. It's just the way I do things. I mean, I can't change me. I mean, I'm still just as excited about going fishing. My grandson's going to be getting older, and taking him, introducing him to tournament fishing. We got some good weekday tournaments, the Tuesday night kind of stuff, Wednesday night, Thursday night kind of stuff. I can't wait to take him to do that. And, I'm always going to be rearing to go.
I went back and read through your post. And I don't know if you have done this or you dealt with them one at a time, but the amount of comments, the amount of people that as soon as you announced it, that the trend that literally you read through them and everybody keeps saying the same thing. You played the game right. What does that mean to you? And ultimately, what does that mean, playing the game right?
I mean, to me, and I know a lot of people said that, to me, that's about as good a compliment as I could ever get.
Yeah.
I wanted to be hardworking because it didn't matter to me if I was the most talented or not. If I worked the hardest, I had a chance. And so very rarely would anybody beat me to the water. I made that kind of a hallmark of my career. I always was there early. And I had roommates that were like, you have lost your mind getting there this early. And I'm like, I'm going to get there this early. And that's just the way it's going to be. And, I just, Rob Newell told me not long ago, he said, man, you did it with grit and grind, which I think was a good analogy of the way I did do it. And you found your own fish. And to me, playing the game right is finding your own fish. Now, is there going to be a Frank Talley, a roommate that tells you about a little tip, or are you going to have a buddy on tour that says, man, hey, they're really biting a buzzbait, or whatever the case is? It can be 1,000 different things. Yeah, that's all going to happen. But finding them yourself is, to me, what doing it the right way is. Working hard and then carrying yourself, treating other people like you would want to be treated. And I'm not going to say that I haven't had instances in my tournament career, because it's a cutthroat game, that I treated people exactly like I would want to be treated. If you do it long enough, you're gonna make some people mad, and probably shouldn't have. So everybody's going to have those instances, but I have tried really hard to stay away from controversy and drama. I've worked as hard as I can, and that's a real compliment to me.
Yeah, I don't know of a greater thing people can say about a competitor when they retire. I mean, everybody retires with accolades, different levels of accolades. Not everyone's going to be a 4-time angler of the year, and those are all great. But ultimately, you want to be respected by the people you compete against.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, to me, peer respect, and it's always been this way. When a peer, another fisherman or a rider or somebody that knew, somebody that I respected as new, when they gave me a fishing compliment, that always meant the very most. Fans, it doesn't matter who can say, my wife, anybody can say whatever they want, but they should say that to you. But when a peer gives you that, now that's really meaningful.
Who was your guy before you started? Like, when you were dreaming of making it, who was the guy you looked up to?
Yeah, and my guy was Rick Clunn. And the voice that I literally, it almost brings tears to my eyes right now thinking about it, was Bob Cobb. I mean, I loved hearing Bob Cobb's call. I never forget, he was on Cape Vincent out there at Lake Ontario. A boat's going through waves, and you can't tell if it's me or not, but it literally looks like a submarine, and it's going out into the lake. And he's like, he sets the whole thing up, how he would do every time. They could only follow 2 or 3 anglers a day.
Yeah.
So usually only had 2 cameramans when I first started. And so when they would follow those anglers, you got that guy's day. It didn't matter if it was good or bad. Lots of times it was bad, but they followed. And they said, Bob said, Clark Wendlandt's catching fish, but here's the thing. We have no idea if he can make it back in these seas. And he's got that deep, gravelly voice. But Rick Clunn was the one that kind of inspired me to do what I do. I just, he was a hard working fisherman that obviously had some amazing intuitive sense to him. Power guy that just, I modeled a lot of what I did after him, and, hopefully changed some of it and perfected it into what was me. But because every angler's got to be himself. But Rick Clunn was kind of the one that started me off.
How wild is it that he is who inspired you, but he also retired at the exact same time as you?
Oh yeah, well, his wife and I have kidded several times, and she's like, is this your last year? Are you doing this next year?" And I'm like, "I don't know if I'm doing it again next year or not." And she's like, "I don't know if Rick is either." So anyway, we ended up doing it at the exact same time. But he's had an amazing career.
Incredible. And the, the unique thing, and I think both of you guys, to win Angler of the Year within the last few years of your competition is amazing. What Rick Clunn did in the last few years of his competition, I mean, truly an amazing person. But he's not done. He says he's fishing the Opens. So will we see you in the Opens?
Not this year. I'm not going to say never. I still have the competition still burns in me, and so who knows? Who knows what? I'm not going to say yes to anything. I'm not going to say no to anything. I'm just hey, I'm retired right now, so I'm gonna live that life.
What do you think you'll miss the most?
Well, that's a really pretty easy one. I have literally had 3 amazing roommates in my tournament fishing career, and you got to have them. I mean, Patty went with me many, many, many years, homeschooled our girls through the whole thing. My kids got to go almost all the way through their entire, until they graduated high school. And so that was really great. But the 3 friends are Davey Hyatt, Mike Sermon, and Frank Talley. And, man, they made it fun. I mean, because it's got to be fun. It can't – I mean, you got so much pressure on you. A lot of it's self-inflicted pressure where you're pushing yourself to do good because you're trying to make a living. And, you're worried about it. And it doesn't matter. Literally in tournament bass fishing, one thing that unless you do it full time, you really are only as good as the last tournament day you fished. I mean, that's how you feel about it. You feel if you don't catch them, it's like, I mean, I don't know how many tournament fishermen you've talked to when they had a bad tournament, but it's usually not. They're not just happy-go-lucky and all cheery about it. I mean, you're over there at the tournament venue just giggling away, and there's another 25, 30 anglers that are sitting there because they're not fishing on day 3, and all of them are mad. They might put on a happy face, but they're literally mad because that's just the way it is. I mean, it's a hard thing to fish really well. I think it's to fish at that level and even make the top 50, make the top 25. I think that's amazing. I mean, that's hard to do.
And that's one of the things that drives me crazy, not just about fishing, but about sports nowadays. Like, I don't think you're supposed to take an ass whooping and enjoy it. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird how people are like, well, smile. Like, Wes Logan's a prime example. That's the reason I call him the little ball of hate, because when he first started, I'd watch him on stage and he literally would be staring at the scale, like willing that weight to be what he wanted it to be in his head. And he hated when it wasn't. But I don't think that's a bad thing. Like, I think that's a weird thing about the world where you're just supposed to smile and be okay with not doing well.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And let me tell you, I love Wes Logan. Wes Logan is going to tell you what is in his mind at that second, and it's not going to be filtered one bit. And I love that. And I love his intensity and how hard he works and, how much he loves the sport and wants to do this for a living. I see a little bit of me in Wes Logan, and yeah, no, you should be mad. I always love the Toyota commercial where the guy was sitting there and he went to his daughter's, they won the championship and he went to the deal and it said participation trophy, and he flipped that thing off and he wrote champs on there because they had won. And he was like, we're not taking a participation trophy. Hey, we either won or we didn't win.
That's competition. It's weird how do you feel that fishing in some ways is held to this weird different standard, like where I mean you expect that if you watch a football game, if you know when a quarterback loses the Super Bowl, they don't even put the camera in that quarterback's face for a while. You know, they you see his face walking off the field, but nobody talks to them until that person's had the chance to compose themselves and stuff like that. In our sport, it is kind of evil because we stand you guys side by side, so one can win and one can lose. But it seems weird at times, like you guys are held to a little bit of a different standard where you're supposed to be okay with that. You're supposed to be a better sport than other sports.
Yeah, I don't agree with that at all. I think culture's changed a little bit on that, and it might have been a little differently. You know, the guy that finishes second really he's kind of the stepchild of the whole thing because he just, you know, everybody wants to yell and clap, and you're going crazy for the guy that wins. But the guy that finishes second, he just kind of shakes a hand and he just moves off. And he had a great tournament. That's the thing. I was told early on in my career, Clark, you can't be mad when you finish second, third, fourth, fifth, 10th, you know, whatever it is. He said there's going to be too much of that. You gotta be happy with that and realize there's really victories. You beat 98 or you beat 97. But for a real competitor, it's just hard. That's hard to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, all you're focused on at that point is just how close you were to winning it.
Yeah.
Who was your greatest rival throughout your career? Did you have one?
Well, I really didn't have one that was like a, you know, personal rival. But my kids, you know, we homeschooled, Patty homeschooled all the way through. And so there was two other families at that time that were both homeschooling. It was Alton Jones and Gary Klein. And so our families did things together, you know, the Joneses and I mean, little Alton literally just, I mean, my girls still got stories about little Alton because I mean, he just ravaged my girls. I mean, they just like, I mean, he's jacking with them all the time. Just, you know, I mean, just things that kids do, but they still got stories about it. But so my oldest daughter, Emily, she loved to fish. And so when we went out on the water, just her and I, you know, we homeschooled, so I could go fishing with her in the morning lots of days. We would make up a tournament, and the tournament literally would always be against Alton Jones and Gary Klein. It was a team tournament, Emily and I, and then Alton Jones against Alton Jones and Gary Klein. And so I would always set a weight. So we were fishing Lake Travis, and Lake Travis is just a moderate lake, but 15 to 18 pounds is good. I was always set it up there at about 20 pounds because I wanted to go out and catch 20 pounds that day, not, you know, 14 and win the tournament. And I mean, my daughter is so competitive, you can't even believe it. And literally we would be in tears every time we went because we would lose by a pound. We couldn't catch that last big one, let's say under a dock or whatever it was. And she was absolutely crying. So my daughter literally would say Alton Jones and Gary Klein. I don't really have anybody, but those are just two that come to my mind.
Well, kids will push you to do things.
They will.
When you look at, do you have a highlight throughout your career? I mean, you've had so many great moments, but is there a moment, like, was there a moment where you look back and you be like, yeah, that was it?
Yeah, I do. Like winning the 2020 Bass Elite Angler of the Year would be the highlight of my career. That you know, I had won 3 FLW Angler of the Years before that, and you know, FLW is kind of not really there anymore, more or less. And so, but at that time, it had a bunch of very, very good fishermen, and I know that. And so, you know, even though that 3, you know, there are 3 tour level Angler of the Years, and they're meaningful. But then winning bass, you know, it was in the COVID year, and it was a messed up schedule where, you know, through a whole chunk of the year we had tournaments get pushed back, and I just rolled with it, and you know, things went well for me, and you know, you kind of get that momentum going, and but that would be the thing I won that was the most meaningful to me.
Do you think it meant more to you because bass was something you stepped away from You know what I mean? Like, but
Yeah.
that whole time, which I think was truly one of the most marvelous times in the sport. Like, I have a weird theory where I think to this day, like where people are like, why don't we have events that pay this and that? I think it's pretty explainable. There was a time when the worldwide leader in sports, ESPN, went to war with a billionaire. And I mean, Hulk Hogan was at freaking tournaments. One year, they gave $1 million away to the guy who won fantasy fishing. So, I mean, it was, I think our sport is in some ways trying to recover from that. I mean, those businesses, obviously, you know, I know ESPN some of those years lost $16 million, but you stepped away from ESPN during that to do the FLW thing. Do you think that's why, and had to watch what happened at Bass? While great things were happening at FLW, but do you think that's why you value it more, because you didn't have it for a long time?
Well, there's a couple things there. You know, first of all, the whole thing that happened, I was fishing both Bass and FLW.
Yeah.
And so what happened was, it was right around 2002. Bass they had Bush Beer as a sponsor. Bush Beer was a big sponsor. And I had Frosted Flakes. And then they required you to put a Bush logo on Tony the Tiger on the boat and on the jersey. And so I mean, Frosted Flakes, Kellogg's was paying me the most money. I just couldn't ask them if I can put a Bush logo next to Tony. I mean, it just seemed pretty obvious. You protect your best sponsor. So, and FLW was doing great at that point in time. So that's why I left. And then fast forward all the way to 2019, I came back, and Bass had done amazing things starting the elites maybe in 2006. Is that about when the elites started?
Yeah, that's when it started.
They had kind of gone on a big rise through that, and FLW mainly through mismanagement, in my opinion. But you know, they just kind of started falling back by the wayside. So. Yeah, but I think it really all starts with the prestige that Bass had because of who started the sport. Ray Scott, a handful of anglers that didn't mind taking the risk, and you know, they started a sport that we all love and have come to love. And I think anglers need to recognize the history that's there and who started it and what happened. It went from, you know, Ray Scott to Helen Sevier, and then ended up to Jerry McInnes, and the whole. I think all of that really does matter. History really matters, and you know. But the prestige that Bass has always had is kind of what sets it all apart, and I don't think that's ever going to change. I mean, I think Bass will and always be the leader, and I want them to be the steward of the sport that. You know, to keep it. I mean, you know, we want tournament bass fishing to go forward in a really healthy place. At least I do, and I think most people would agree with that. And so I think that's Bass's responsibility.
So that prestige sounds like, I mean, which totally makes sense to me. I mean, there's only one Kentucky Derby. There's only one Masters for golf. There's you know, that was planted in you before you even became a pro, I would assume.
Oh, no,
you know, when you were actually a fan.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the Bassmaster Classic obviously is the kind of the pinnacle of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, I didn't win the Bassmasters Classic in my very, very best years of tournament bass fishing. You know, best long stretch I was fishing FLW. I wasn't even making the Classic. I think I made 18 Forest Wood Cups in a row. You know, with all of the fishermen that ended up as elites were fishing that. And so, you know, I could have made a lot more Classics had I been at Bass, but yeah, I mean, when I dreamed about it as a kid, I dreamed about Bassmaster, and that is just, it will always be the leader in my mind.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I think we talk about that a lot, but I mean, I think that's just, like I say, like my love for bass. I mean, I worked for Bass, but this started long before I even thought it was a possibility that one day I could work for Bass. Like,
right.
I still have a lot of days where I'm like, how the hell did this work out? Like, why am I here? And thank God that I am. but you can't change what was planted in your head as a kid.
No,
Like that,
that's true.
you know, that's the dream. What's your dream for retirement?
I'm going to be, I talked about it a minute ago, but I'm going to be just as intense on fishing, on hunting, on spending time with my grandkids, because I've already determined, my grandson's right at 2 years old, or almost 2. And he is so much fun. I cannot even tell. I mean, and he's intense like I am. I mean, it's crazy. His dad's that way too, but I'm that way. And he just, like, when he gets on something, he's all on that. And I just have so much fun with him. He's a true hoot. So I think I'm going to hunt, fish. We've got a ranch. I'm going to work there, and more. There's more work there than I could ever want. So keeping a 1,100 acre ranch going strong, even though my brother spends a lot of time doing that with me, it's a full-time job anyway. So I'm not going to be bored. I can promise you.
I would imagine, I think it's normal for everybody that has a job where they travel, whether it's fishing, whether it's whatever, make up for lost time. I imagine that's probably part of the feeling in your gut, because I think no matter how much you're around, you still feel like, I think that's being a parent. It is the greatest thing on earth, but you're going to have some guilt.
Yeah, you are. And I was fortunate because my family traveled with me for probably about 15 years. A lot. And we traveled all over the country. They got their education on the road, for the most part. But yeah, the great thing about the job as it is, I'm not going to miss the traveling. I can promise you that much. The traveling, if there was a downside to the job, that would be the traveling. But there's nothing you can do about it. You're going to fish, Ontario, and you're going to fish Lake Travis in Texas, or Rayburn, or you're going to travel. That's just the way it is. And I think what makes the sport so unique, seeing all the different venues anyway.
Yeah. It's also one of the best parts, that you get to see all that.
You do.
But
you get
sucks
to see lakes. And I'm going to travel to those lakes. You may not see me on what I would consider not a good fishery, but if I consider it a good fishery, I'm going to go fishing there. The thought of going to Lake Ontario when they're not quite as deep, and maybe like 10 to 15, and you can just catch them at will, that's pretty enticing. I'm going to do that a good bit. So.
Yeah, the actual fact of getting to set the hook all the time. Think of
how many no more shaking off. No, we're not doing that.
You've caught an incredible amount of 5+ pounders in your life, but just imagine, how many 5-pounders have you let swim with your bait?
Oh my God!
In hopes that you will come back in a day and they will eat again.
Times. So many times, and people don't even realize that. I have reflected in the last 5 years on how many bass I've caught over the years. All these different lakes, practice, tournament, but yeah, I've let so many of them swim. God, that is not anymore.
Look out, fish! There's no more pre-fish baits. One of the coolest things throughout your career, obviously, 4 Angler of the Year titles. But one of the cool things that came with those FLW titles that gets talked about, I think we talked about it last time you were on this show, is being on the cornflakes box. Or was it cornflakes or frosted flakes?
Well, there was actually several, and it was a 2-year deal. It was there was cornflakes, and there was frosted flakes, and there was mini wheats, and yeah, there was 3 or 4. It just hit the right year. I won Angler of the Year. The years before that, Denny Brower won. He was actually on a Wheaties box, and then their sponsorship flipped, and so Kellogg's came along, and so I was on a Frosted Flakes, and yeah, that's something you can show somebody and say, listen, this is where I was at one point in my career. But, I don't even really think about it that much anymore. But I do say it's pretty cool.
At the time, was it like, what kind of impact did that have in your life? Like, were you running into people routinely that were like, went to school with you and were like, hey, you're not going to believe what I saw in the grocery store?
Yeah, a little bit. it actually, as the most recognized I've ever been in fishing, actually had to do with when I had a TV show for a number of years, Fishing Hunt in Texas, because it was just on so much. And, it's Wade Middleton and I are good friends, and one thing would lead to another, and I'd be on this show, and I'd be on hunting shows and fishing shows. And so through that, tournament fishing's part of it. And, like if I'm at a classic or something, I get recognized by lots and lots of people. But even just driving around town, even just, going to a grocery store, I still get recognized some. But yeah, the Kellogg's box was pretty cool.
How good does it feel to not have to deal with the BS of tournament fishing? Because it does feel like there's a lot of BS in the last, and not just forward facing. I mean, there's meetings upon meetings that seem to be happening, good, better, and different. How good does it feel to be like, yeah, I don't care. I'm not doing it anymore.
Well, Davey Hyatt and I've talked about this a lot, and I want literally what's best for tournament bass fishing in all situations. I think it's an amazing sport, and I want it to continue being an amazing sport, and young people, be able to participate in it. And to me, that you could be a kid on the shores and watch a Denny Brower or a great fisherman come by flipping, and all of a sudden you just kind of get that desire and you turn in and you start watching TV or you read Bassmaster magazine or whatever it is. That's how so many have gotten started, and they may ended up getting a canoe and fishing on the bank and going from there. And that's a lot of that's why I also don't think forward facing is that great, because a kid like that doesn't have the resources for forward facing, he can still compete. He may have to work into it. He's going to have to do good at tournaments because, let's face it, guys in the Elite Series these days feel like if they qualify for the Elite Series, they ought to be making a great living. Well, I'm sorry, but it just doesn't work that way. Here's how it works is that if you get to the Elite Series, you got a great platform. And then if you can either do well in tournaments, or you can do well sponsors, or maybe YouTube or social media, however it works for you. You can make a living doing it, but it doesn't necessarily mean qualifying that you're just going to be set.
No, I think that's just, that's marketing number one. Like, if you take any event, like, it doesn't matter what it is. They show the person winning and getting the accolades, and that's how every sport's marketed. That's how literally every product's marketed. You know what I mean? Like, they don't show you the base model truck or boat in the ads. They show you the top of the line.
Right.
They don't show you going to the gas station to fill it up. They just show it ripping down the lake.
That's true.
What are 3 traits that you possess? If I look at your career, you've had a Hall of Fame career. Very, very few people can compare their careers accolade-wise, length-wise, diversity like yours. But what are 3 traits that allowed you to become who you are in this sport?
Intensity, persistence, and faith. Probably so. Yeah. I'm an intense person, and I'm not going to take no for an answer, at least by a bass. From a company, maybe I'm going to take no for an answer, but when a bass says no, I'm going to keep working at him. And so I had those. I don't know. I think that's just the person I am. It may not work in every situation, but it works in pro bass fishing. And maybe hardworking would be in there somewhere, but it might be part of those other ones. But I was a hard worker. I worked hard at it, and I enjoyed working hard. It's not like that was like something that was hard for me to do. I wanted to work at it. I wanted to be better. A new bait came along. I wanted to learn it. I wanted to fish. All along through my entire career, I would fish. I don't know how many days we'd average being away, maybe 100, 125, 150, to tournaments, but I'd fish another 100, 125 every year. I'd be fishing every day. Matter of fact, if I wasn't fishing, I was usually mad. I wanted to fish every single day. I did not ever, because and so many people ask me, hey, well, what about this? What about this marketing situation? What about how do I make a living at tournament bass fishing? And my answer still is today, you need to know how to fish really well, because that's what it's going to take. You got to be able to catch them. And that's just the way it is. Not ever going to change.
What is one trait you wish you had a little more of?
Well, probably patience. And I don't have a lot of patience. I can be patient on certain situations, like on sight fishing. I've got plenty of patience. But for most things, and anybody that knows me very well is smiling and laughing at that anyway, because they know sure well I got no patience. But there was many tournaments when I really was on them the best, and I was impatient towards maybe the last day, but a lot of times the last day, and didn't grab the win. Now, and I'm sure every fisherman that has a long career has got plenty of tournaments that he's saying to himself, man, I wish I'd have won that one. I wish I'd have won this one. I'd love to have won I would have loved to have won on Ontario. That would have been a true dream to me. And I had some chances. I was right there multiple times with some third. I finished second there. I finished third there. I finished fourth there. I finished in the top 10 a number of other times. That was a special place to me. But if I'd have had a little more patience, I think I probably would have won a few more tournaments.
Why was Ontario so special? Because that's where it started,
Yeah.
or?
I think it's where it was started, and it's a byproduct of what Forward Facing has done. But I was a guy from Texas that really fished not quite as much like Rick Clunn, but a lot like Kevin. I fished like Kevin did for the most part. I was fast. I covered water. The reason I caught them as good as I did and consistently as I did, because I saw a lot of the lake during practice, and I fished, a bite was enough. I didn't have to sit in that area. No, a lot of times I would get a feel for what was there. And so it was covering a lot of water. So I came from Texas. I never fished for smallmouth in my life. That was the first smallmouth I ever caught, was on Lake Ontario. And I came there, and that fit my game perfectly. Covering water on big flats. That was the best. Making long casts. And I learned in that very first Ontario tournament that those smallmouth, they get shallow, and they like being shallow, like 2-3 feet. And it doesn't happen that way anymore. So you can't win shallow anymore. There's plenty of bass. There's lots of 20-pound stringers. If there was a tournament on Ontario that wasn't forward facing, shallow would probably beat deep. Deep would be too hard because you can't see the fish. So, you're going to be back out there just dragging. And, instead of throwing at a dot, like forward facing throwing at a dot. So that was one of the byproducts of forward facing and smallmouth fishing. I always excelled in smallmouth tournaments. And it was just because of my style was set up good for it. I love jerk baiting, spinner baiting with a big spinner bait, throwing it, reeling it fast. Chatterbait in other years, topwater when it's calm. Those are ways to catch giant smallmouth that most people just didn't understand. They wanted to just throw out there and do a little shaky on a drop shot. And the biggest ones would bite something moving. So I learned that, but that all went by the wayside because forward facing kind of dominated that.
You told me not to talk about it 8 minutes into this, but you've brought forward facing up a lot. You really have.
I have.
It's not my fault, Clark. When you listen to this back, okay. You're going to find out it wasn't me.
I know.
It wasn't me.
I know.
But, I do. I said it when I read your infamous letter that, most people have seen. If you haven't, go back and check it out. I think your opinion is very valuable. You've seen the sport in many different ways. You've been a benefactor of forward facing sonar at times. So, I don't think anybody's opinion in this situation is wrong. I keep bringing it up, but Carl said it on this show once. He said, in this argument, everybody's right and everybody's wrong, because the people that feel that they're right feel that way, and the people that feel that they're wrong? You feel they're adamantly wrong. Do you honestly feel that this sport will not be what it is if forward facing stays in the game?
I don't want to say that I honestly feel that, but I'm worried about that. I'm worried that the sport that the majority of us have come to love, because I think what really brings the passion, like bass fishermen are a passionate group, man. I mean, there may be passion in lots of sports or whatever, but I'm serious. I mean, this is a passionate group. And the letter I wrote came from a true, I am worried about this sport passion. That's why I wrote it. We wrote it on the way back from the tournament. And of course, my wife edited it, and, you know, she gets a lot of the credit, but those were just my ideas because I was like, this is, I mean, I titled it One Final Plea, and it really was my final plea. I mean, it was my final plea to bass. So I'm worried about that. I don't honestly know the answer. I think the sport would be in a better place without it. But I may be wrong, and I totally admit that. But anything that I ever write or say that is, you know, like that, I do it out of a full love and want the sport to be the best place.
I mean, I think one thing screamed through that letter was passion. It was that's literally all it. I mean, here's what frustrates me in that disagreement. And I mean, I don't have a side. I literally don't. Like, there's parts of me that loves what I've learned from it. There's parts of me that hates what I've seen it do. It changes your mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I am very much down the middle, which most people don't like to hear, but I'm just being honest. But the thing that I've hated about this argument is how many people that have inserted thoughts and opinions and presented them like fact, which they're not.
Yeah.
None of us will know how this truly will affect things long term, but it's definitely changing things. I mean, you're a prime example. You said at the beginning of this interview, you would not have retired without forward facing sonar. So if Bass makes the decision that there's no forward facing sonar, or it is limited to a very small amount, you're still competing next year.
That's correct. I would be. And I thought about fishing NPFL because NPFL dropped, you know, they basically dropped forward facing. You know, but here's the thing, Dave. I've done this 33 years. I've been blessed beyond belief to be able to do what I dreamt about as a kid for a living for this whole time. And I don't have to do that. I mean, people can say, oh, he's just an old fuddy-duddy. He's just, you know, I mean, get out of here. Go on, you old guy, whatever, you know, whatever they say. I don't care, honestly. To me, I just know what the sport of bass fishing is. It is amazing people. And this is the other part of it that I know. And I know this from my passion inside. There needs to be mystery in bass fishing. Okay. The mystery is what brings the passion out and pushes you to literally be obsessed by trying to figure out how to catch a more. And so part of the mystery that is there, you know, I know I'm sounding a little bit like Randy Blockett, but it's true. There needs to be mystery in bass fishing. And, you know, I believe that, you know, let's just say the year that Kevin Van Dam came, or the year that Jason Christie showed up on bass fishing, or Greg Hackney, or me, or whoever it is, that year, however many guys came into the elites or to pro bass fishing, there was probably one or two guys that made it. That's it. Those are the guys we still talk about. The Rick Cluns, the Denny Browers, the Clark, that we still talk about them. Those guys came in because they had an ability to go to a lake that they've never seen before. And in 3 days, they could figure out how to catch enough bass to whoop everybody else. And that is what the sport should be based on. It should be based on that. And technology can help it, but it shouldn't be where you have to do that to compete. That's just Clark Wendlandt's opinion, but I think it's pretty well grounded.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can argue with that. I mean, that's what made the superstars, the masters. So, like, I mean, how many times in a seminar have you got the question, well, when do you know when to stay or when to leave? There's no exact answer to that. Nobody can answer it. You just know but now a machine tells you. Now there's a machine that overrides that.
That's
like
right.
In your gut, you can be like, no, I need to be here. It's gonna start happening. But if you look on that machine and you don't see any, you're like, yeah, but there's no fish there.
Yeah. I mean,
So
why even cast? I mean, why even
Yeah.
throw it? Why throw a jerk bait out there and jerk it when there's not one around? So, I mean, I mean, here's the thing, Dave. I mean, we can say it's good or we can say it's bad, but it's different. And it's a different sport now. And that is my disappointment. I think the sport was amazing the way it was, and we didn't need it.
Well, why did those friggin' tournament anglers bring it?
Because
that's the joke.
So much easier.
That's the joke of it all. I mean, crazy. You mentioned Randy Blockett, and Randy Blockett has a lot of points that I agree with. He has a lot of points I totally disagree with. I mean, I totally disagree that, that these young anglers can't fish. I mean, they can fish. You're a prime example. You've seen that. To just think that did a machine help some people? Yeah. Is it what made them? No. But I do agree with that feeling, that mystery, that not knowing. That's the magic. Like, to me, I've been front row so many magical moments that nobody ever gets to see. I mean, I've followed Aaron Martins down the bank when he won Angler of the Year for the entire season. And Aaron has always blown me away because he did things like just so different. You know what I mean? Like, where everything in a magazine says, okay, if you're throwing this jerk bait along this riprap, you just keep going. But for whatever reason, at some point, Aaron thought, no, I need to cast right over there. And he hooked you know what I mean? But that wasn't because he saw something. It was because he knew there's maybe some structure there. But it's just the mastery that exists around the sport. It definitely has changed it. It's changed it in a big way. And here's what I'm frustrated about. For an entire year, and I'm sure you heard this from me or Davey Height. Maybe only 6 months. I screamed from the rafters that we need to limit it and just allow guys to use it for 2 hours. And we're going to have 2 hours at the end of the day where you can use it. And everybody on the Elite Series told me I was an idiot and that's uncontrollable. And my answer to that was, I can turn my lights on and I'm in Canada on my cell phone. So you can't tell me there's some way we can't figure it out. But I feel like in retrospect, now I got a lot of people who say, oh, yeah, that wasn't that bad of an idea to have a power hour or whatever you want to refer to it as. And MLF's getting a lot of love for that idea. But I feel like our guys were so focused on getting it outlawed that they didn't ever look at a temporary, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Would you have stayed if it was just 2 hours out of 8 hours that you were allowed to use it? Would you have stayed on the Elite Series?
Probably. But I think you're right. Everything you just said is exactly right. And it's exactly what happened. Guys like me were so focused on getting rid of it. Matt Herons and, there's a bunch of us that didn't want it anymore. But the power hour ideas, BPT has got the best setup going right now. They got the best one. And I like what NPFL's doing. Great. That's great because they're getting rid of it. I don't like it anyway, so I don't want them to be able to use it. But if you want to say, okay, well, let's just see how it's going to be if we get to use it some of the time, and then you got to fish the rest of the time. You notice how I say fish, because one of them's fishing and one of them's looking at bass, throwing at them. But we'll fish the rest of the time. I think what BPT's got going is grand. I'm no BPT fan. I don't like it at all, honestly. But I'm just like, I think that, they've got a structure that lets it happen a little bit easier. They've got periods. But I think your power hour idea is exactly right. We were wrong in going after trying to ban it because probably was never going to happen, but that's what I think should happen.
Yeah. The thing that I like about the limited time is I'm a fan. And when I commentate on events, I'm a fan. I commentate like a fan because that's what I
Yeah,
watch it as.
I
And
agree.
ultimately, I just want to see the eventual angler of the year or the eventual winner of the tournament of the day. I just want to see them tested. I want to see
Right.
I want to see Kyoya be forced to fish.
I do too.
I want to, because I know he's incredible with the other stuff, but I want to see him. And I think a lot of people would be shocked when they see what happens with some of these people that they think only rely on it. Some of them will shock you when it comes
Yeah.
to, and vice versa.
Yeah.
I mean, you are a prime example. Greg Hackney's a prime example. You guys are freaking good with forward facing sonar. You know, and it's not like you can't do it. I hate that's the Randy Blockett stuff that I hate, where it's like older guys can't do it, young guys can, and it's spotlighting,
Yeah,
and it's
I agree.
those are all extremist ideas. But that way, then I see, and to me, here's a weird thing, and this sounds really weird, but one of the things that I've always thought is one of the things missing in fishing is everybody's a good guy. There's good sides. Like whoever wins, everybody cheers for. You know what I mean? And to me, if you look at other sports, if you look at baseball, you can't be a Yankees fan without disliking the Boston Red Sox. You know what I mean? All those sort of things. You have to hate them. You can't be a Dallas Cowboys fan without hating the Eagles, and vice versa. That's and I think that would have allowed that to happen in our sport. You know, in the way that, like, if I'm watching Clark Wendlandt fish all morning for 6 hours, and you are fishing, and you're flipping buckbrush, you're doing whatever, and it's the traditional type of fishing that I love. You're throwing a top water, and I'm cheering you on, and you're leading the tournament. But I know at the last 2 hours, that's power hour, and Kyoya has not done much today, but I know things can happen quick. I'm not only am I not turning Kyoya off, I'm more intrigued to watch Kyoya because I'm a fan of you, and I have to, you know what I mean? And I just think it gives it's a safer decision, let's just say.
Well, I don't know on the safer decision part. I think it's honestly at this point, I think it's the best decision. That would be intrigue of watching the event would be amazing if they did that. That's what's going to happen with BPT. It's going to be so intriguing. I mean, what happens? What period did they go with forward facing? What period did they not use it? I mean, I think that would be the best.
Yeah. No, that'll be very interesting to watch. In Davey and I, we had thought like it's got to be the same 2 hours for everyone, because to me that's a reset. You know what I mean? Now they gotta everybody's doing the same thing at the same time, and but that's not what's going to happen. But I do want to talk to you about a few things that aren't fishing. In your great state of Texas, there is a big event happening this week. I don't know if you've heard about it, but Mike Tyson, who has been retired for many, many years, has not had a professional bout in 20 years, is fighting Jake Paul. And if you look at that in our fishing world, that is basically Denny Brower is going to fight Ben Milliken or Trey McKinney, whoever you want to. Ben Milliken's probably a proper analogy because he's got a big social media following. I don't know if I'd put Jake Paul in the same area as Ben Milliken as far as like what his skills. But have you paid any attention to that event?
Absolutely not. But I will say that Mike Tyson was old school. I mean, he would bite your ear off. So if you want, if anybody can do it, being as old as he can, it'd be him. But I'm not thinking he's gonna win. But anyway, that's what I'd say.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see what happens. It's in Texas. It's at Jerry's World. Uh-huh. It's hard to believe that many people are going to show up, but I mean, it's on Netflix. Everyone will watch it. It'll probably be one of the most watched events ever because it's on Netflix and everyone has got it and they'll watch it. Yeah. Are you a football fan at all?
Yeah, absolutely.
Who's your team?
Like pro?
Yeah.
Cowboys.
Oh boy. I mean, Jerry won't even put the damn curtains up.
I mean, it's ridiculous. They got no running game at all. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, why even watch them?
It's frustrating. It is frustrating. The Cowboys, I feel your pain because I know you love hockey, and I'm a Leafs fan, and we are the freaking Dallas Cowboys of the NHL. We have all the money. We've had several crazy owners, and we spend a lot of money. We get some superstars, but we just suck.
Yeah.
I mean, regular season, a little not so bad,
Pretty
but
good.
playoffs
Got
not so good.
players. Yeah. I literally watch. I'll listen to hockey radio driving down the road a lot of times, and they talk about the Leafs far more than anybody else, kind of like the Cowboys, and so it's fun. I keep up with them a lot because they talk about them all the time, and they. I don't even know how they're doing this year though. How are they?
I mean, season just started, but they're playing pretty decent. I mean, they're playing good. Their new coach is yelling at them, which I think they've needed for a while. They had they had a coach that played a lot of games and was their buddy.
Yeah.
Now they got a guy who is the exact opposite of that, and they seem to be responding to it. But it's early. I mean, we play well always this time of year.
Okay.
It's later in the year that things get worse. When the playoffs start, every spring the Leafs fall. But dude, I will tell you this. Personally, as what I get to do for a living is an absolute joke. It's foolish that a guy gets to literally just yell and do crazy stupid stuff like I get to do for a living. And I'm so thankful for it. But one of the things in my head, weirdly enough, over the years, there's always certain names. I wanted to MC one of Danny Brower's wins because, when I came on, I knew he wasn't going to be around that much longer competing. And I got to do that. And you were one of those names, and there was always those years. But, man, I would love to MC a Clark Wendlandt win. And I had opportunities at the TTBC where I'd see all the FLW guys and to have been on the stage, to have shared the stage with you for these last number of years, to have been able to announce your Angler of the Year in 2020, it honestly is a career highlight to me, and I honestly want to thank you for that. You're a great man, and that might not mean anything to anybody else, but it means the world to me.
Well, and it means the world to me too, Dave. I appreciate that very much. And I told you this the other day on text, but you're the greatest I've ever seen at doing this. And I know you don't want me to give you great accolades, but I just am amazed each and every day. And especially when you start calling those boats out, because you've literally got every name memorized with everything they've done, whether it be Wes Logan, the little ball of hate, or whoever it is. I mean, you got them all going. And I just truly, being able to do this for my whole career, my whole working career, is a true blessing for me. And I wish guys would quit complaining quite as much as they do. Because, listen, not everybody's going to be able to fish for a living, even if you make the Elite Series. But the guys that can, are fishing for a living. I mean, let's pinch ourselves and say, man, hey, this is pretty daggone cool.
Yeah, it is. And we're all very lucky to be part of it. I mean, it's funny. You were there when I made a lot of those little speeches in 19 and 20 about how special this time is, and how this group is. We were part of a group that was building this mega thing up. You know what I mean? The world kind of thought that bass was done. And I think it was a special time. But I think I say this all the time. I'm like, these are what you're living is the good old days. These are the days that you will sit on a friggin' rocking chair one day and be like, right. Yeah, let me tell you a story about this or that happened.
That's right.
And it's I think the really lucky people on earth are people like yourself that figured that out. And not that I think that any of because if you say anything in the world today, somebody's going to spin it. I understand where people want to make things better. I understand your frustration about Forward Facing Sonar. I don't not understand that, but I also think the world could use a little bit more of being thankful because we got it pretty freaking good.
We do. And I echo and second that big time. You're right. We do got it really good.
Well, Clark Wendlandt, I've enjoyed our conversation, and I mean, you're welcome to come back here anytime.
Well, you just asked me because honestly, talking to you about professional bass fishing, somebody that understands it, knows it as well as you do, I think it's really cool. And so I appreciate you having me on.
Well, thank you very much. The one and only Clark Wendlandt. As you guys know, this is the Awkwardly Honest Fishing Podcast. And at moments during that conversation, it was both awkward and very honest. But I thank Clark Wendlandt for his honesty. I would never judge him on his decision because guess what? It's his decision. And what he's doing, if you ask me, is really no different than what you hear in a lot of other sports. People say, when I stop having fun, I'll stop doing this. And Clark Wendlandt feels that Forward Facing Sonar has made it a lot less fun. It's not the way he wants to play the game. So I thank him for his honesty. And don't worry, he'll be back here. We'll have Clark Wendlandt on here again in the future. But I wish him happy trails in his retirement. What an incredible family. And I thank them for everything they've given to this sport. Remember, Avco Breakwater gloves. This is your opportunity to win a pair. All you got to do is leave it in your comment. Just write Avco Breakwater gloves. I got another pair. I'm going to send them to you guys or to whoever wins next week. Blow up the comments. Keep coming back here for this show because guess what? I enjoy talking to you guys. I enjoy talking to our guests. And without you guys, it's just me having a video call, which is fun, but not near as much fun as we have every single week. As always, enjoy being. Have a great week. And hey, Bob Cobb, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe because Bob Cobb of the Bassmasters told you to. You hear?